The wind is howling, and the blood test is ready. The real threat isn't the monster we're chasing. It's the person standing right next to you. In 1982, The Thing wasn't a mere creature feature. It was a cold-blooded study of how paranoia and distrust can dismantle a community faster than any outsider. I'm Ryan Doze, and this is Everyday Dread. Today, we are heading out from Outpost 31 to discuss The Thing as a chilling metaphor for the political paranoia and erosion of social trust that many of us feel today. When we stop seeing each other as neighbors and start seeing each other as threats, is there anything left worth saving? Joining me to deconstruct the infection of suspicion is Leah Robinson. Let's get started. To sit down for a fantastic conversation about my personal favorite horror movie, John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. I know it's crazy. Bearded guy in his mid-30s liking John Carpenter movies is in and of itself quite tropish, but The Thing is a fantastic movie, and I get to discuss the theme in this movie of paranoia, polarization, and how it can help us interact politically, as that has become more and more of a ever-present part of society here in 2026. And I'm doing this alongside my good friend, Leah Robinson, Reverend Dr. Leah Robinson. And I want to just start off the conversation, Leah, with you giving people a little bit of a resume of what you find yourself doing, and then we will jump into how we were introduced to John Carpenter's version of The Thing.
Absolutely. So I'm a PhD in theology. I'm on many of the beloved theology podcasts. I didn't shout out to Theology on the Rocks, which is me and my bestie, Christy,
Yes.
who's also a PhD. I have a master's of divinity from Mercer University, and I currently teach at Mercer University as well as a professor of theology. I've taught now for, we decided, 17 years because Ryan kindly did the math for me because I don't teach math and I don't want to think about it. I love horror films. I always have. As I have said before, my parents were very open with letting me. I mean, I was an 80s kid, so there wasn't a lot of restrictions on stuff that we
Mhm.
watched. Like, I was
Yeah.
thinking about The Labyrinth the other day, and I was like, there's a lot happening in this one. And we just watched it. I think unless it was blatant nudity, and then my dad would do like this and put his hand over my
Ah,
boobs. But other than that,
bets are off.
all bets are off. Like, if someone was just shooting up something, Bruce Willis decided to just go crazy, it was fine. It was only the nudity. I grew up in Georgia, Southern Baptist.
Such an isolated That's so great.
Guns, we okay with.
Yeah.
Boobies, not so much.
Yes, you did grow up in a conservative environment. Guns, A-okay. If we see
A-okay.
any bit of skin, you're going straight to hell.
You want to drink a whole gallon of wine? That's fine. But yeah,
Awesome.
keep your butt in your pants, dudes. Unless you're Jonathan Bailey. So that is my resume. So I'm mostly a expert in theology, but I will say I do have a deep, deep love and I would say PhD knowledge of horror films and have from the very beginnings. I mean, my parents were pretty okay with it, and I was saying before is my mom will text me and be like, "What horror films have you seen recently?" Which is always such a fun thing for a mom.
Yeah, very, very cool moms. My mom would not have been that mom, not even close. She would've been like, "Jurassic Park is a little scary."
Oh,
And that was my first, experience of being terrified watching a movie. I didn't go to the bathroom regularly for a month.
when that shoots out its side.
Yeah,
Oh.
for a very small boy watching that and as a 5 or 6-year-old,
I also saw that in the theaters with my parents,
what
and
a
I would
wholesome
think I was
experience.
also underage, and I think they snuck me in
So
'cause
you
they
learned it somewhere.
'cause they wanted to see the movie, and they had kids, and it was the '90s, so you didn't, shield them from you just
Right.
took them with you.
Yeah. You just gotta, you gotta know what's out there, Leah. You gotta know what dangers are in the world, and Jurassic Park is a great way
Yeah.
to let you know that. I am most interested since you're talking about how you were exposed to horror films. When did John Carpenter's version of The Thing come in? Because I know you have a love and appreciation for Halloween, but
Mm,
The Thing is more of a recently revisited, celebrated movie. This movie did not do well when it came out in 1982. It came out a month before E.T. And E.T. became a cultural phenomenon. The Thing is not E.T. So how were you introduced to The Thing?
yeah. Curious year, by the way, 1982 here. Wonderful things happening that year. How was I introduced? I thought about this and, I usually have a really intense, like, memory about where I've seen a film. Of course, I saw Halloween very
Yeah.
early on. Clearly, I didn't see this while I was in my mom's womb, though I technically did see ET because she did go see ET
That's
when she
fantastic.
was pregnant with me.
So you're technically your first movie was E.T.?
I think so, yeah. Yeah,
That's
she
incredible.
loves to tell the story, but she didn't go see The Thing, so that should tell you something about my
Yeah.
horror so that's tough competition. I saw it later on. I must have been in college, I think, when I saw it, and, I don't think I appreciated it until they did the remake. When was the remake? Do you remember? I revisited it after seeing the remake because I
Ooh,
think I saw it and I was just like it kind of in my mind sat with The Fly, if you've seen The Fly.
yeah.
Um 'Cause it just had that sort of psychotic and Beetlejuice, the sort of psychotic, like, '80s special effects where you're just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"This is" it's kinda terrifying now
Yeah.
if you look at it, but I think you watch it and you're like, "Okay, this is a bit weird," but also it seemed, I think, a bit unbelievable to me in a way, but then I saw the remake, and the remake, it was actually okay, and I guess we could maybe talk about that later if you liked it or not, but then I revisited it, and I was just like, "This is" and Carpenter's saying a lot in that film.
Right.
Like
And we're gonna dig into a lot of it because this movie is from the cast and the crew that put it together. Just the behind the scenes about this movie could
mhm,
take us a whole conversation. And there's definitely some things I want to pull out of what Carpenter has said about this movie and what Kurt Russell has said about this movie. But I was introduced to this movie kind of as a follow-up to another movie I love, another movie that Leah and I absolutely cannot get enough time to talk about, Ridley Scott's Alien movie.
mhm,
I remember saying to a friend of mine, and I forget who specifically recommended this, but I had said, "Oh, dude, I got Ridley Scott's Alien movie is unimpeachably at the top of my science fiction horror list." And he's like, "Well, if you like that movie, you would love this." And I remember watching it for the first time, just being blown away by the ambiguity of it, just the vagueness of who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, and then how
yeah,
the movie ends. I'm like, "What? Excuse me? We don't get to know? We don't get closure on this?" Like, yeah, that's kind of how life is. You don't always get closure. You don't always get to know the definitive, we lost, we won. Sometimes you're just like you say what Kurt Russell says, "We're gonna wait here for a while. We're gonna see what happens." But I love this movie. I mean, again, a guy that looks like me in his mid-30s saying he loves John Carpenter movies is redundant, and I get it. But this movie is awesome, and it's awesome for a lot of different reasons. Mostly it's cultural, it's an ability to be culturally evergreen is
mhm.
what I wanted to talk with Leah tonight about, with its political undertones of paranoia and polarization. But I want to give you guys a little bit of details about the movie, and then we will jump into our theme. And I'm very excited for this. Very, very excited. It was released on June 25th of 1982, the beginning of the blockbuster season. There was a very young Leah Robinson waiting to come
A
into
a week before I was born.
so yeah, like Leah's really she's born at the peak of pop culture.
Phones,
Right in between The Thing and E.T. hitting the theaters, Leah Robinson.
they knew. And then I got to be old enough to go see Jurassic Park and Scream. What a time to be alive.
This movie was famously directed by John Carpenter, and it stars Kurt Russell is phenomenal in this movie. Keith David and Wilford Brimley, just to name a few. This movie is the summary is kind of simple, but I want to just fill you in case you're a little rusty on this. In remote Antarctica, a group of American research scientists are disturbed at their base camp by a helicopter shooting at a sled dog. Always a great place to start a
I
movie.
know it's the 80s. We're shooting dogs.
When they take in the dog, it brutally attacks human beings and other canines in the camp. They soon discover that the beast can assume and take the shape of its victims. As the unknowable, indefinable organism grows, it gains unique abilities and it relentlessly sows discord and doubt in the camp. McCready, played by Kurt Russell, is a resourceful helicopter pilot. He leads the camp crew in a desperate, fiery battle against this vicious creature before it picks them all off one by one. Now, Leah, John Carpenter's thing hits differently, I feel like, for a lot of people. When you watch this movie now, how do you think it relates to the climate of our modern life in 2026 here in America? What shows up most evident to you when you watch this now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you talked about politically, it reminded me when I watched it again of being at Christmas and
Mhm.
never knowing what people's political beliefs are. You have to, like, do, like, code words.
Right.
I like kids. Do you like kids? What kind of do you like kids that are would you protect a kid after like, it's just
Yeah.
you just start on this, like, weird, like, you just have to work your way up. What about
Yeah.
if the kids aren't white? But I feel like that's what this reminds me of. Because I think that's the most terrifying part of the film when I watch it is this idea that you don't know who's with you and who's not, and not even politically, but, like, who's gonna murder you and who's not, you know? And these are people that you did know. That's the thing too that reminds me of politics. People you once knew that just do a complete 180 and you're like so that's kinda what it reminds me of, at least in the current climate, is it feels as though we are in one camp or the other, much like these folks are, and also
Right.
very hard to discern sometimes, and we have to it's almost like we can't interact without having to discern if you are in one or the other, which feels very akin to that film.
It kind of reminds me of how sometimes around things like elections or tragedies, people reveal more and more about themselves. And if something takes you by surprise, someone puts up a marathon Facebook post about, like, here's what I think about this. And it's like, oh, that just came out into the light. Like the organism in the thing, they have a violent reaction to a certain stimuli. We're going to talk a little bit about the blood test. And that kind of feels like sometimes how events or different figures, they inject this bit of adrenaline into a situation that creates a reaction. And then you start to learn more and more and more about people as they reveal more and more about themselves. The crew in the thing do this all the time because they're not just infighting, they're trying to figure out who is, like you said, with them or against them. It's an us versus them dynamic, full stop. When
At least now, I think the problem with well, one there's many problems. One of the problems with the thing is that they look just like they looked before, and I think part of that is at least now we have, like, hats and stuff you can kind of discern a little I'm like, "I'm gonna do a wide berth around that group." You can kinda,
Yeah,
it's the ones that don't project that,
yeah, yeah,
that are harder because 'cause they're like you said, they're not enemies, that's so stupid, and we're so polarized, I hate that even came out of my mouth, is that they're people who have opposing viewpoints that are just in plain
right,
sight, but they've made us too think they're enemies, actually.
right,
That's a political maneuver that's happened in this world too, is that what once was just a disagreement about X, Y, and Z has now become that they are enemies and or we're all like, one yeah, with us
yeah.
or against us sort of thing.
Polarization has led to demonization. It's
100%.
like, I can't just be at the opposite pole of a topic or a belief or a concept. It's gone from being, we just see this differently, to no, I'm right, you're wrong. And actually, you being wrong makes you evil.
Yeah, and part, I think too, it's getting increasingly difficult to just say this is I mean, not to, we don't need to dive too much into politics, but like that it's getting harder and harder for me to understand. Usually I'm pretty good at understanding other people's positions, but it's
Yeah.
getting we're bordering on it becoming an evil act in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. No, I think that there are many, many cases where that is, it's like, we're not heading there, we are there. Yeah. There's this modern fear, and I think it's expressed in the thing pretty well, that those nearest to us, there's something secretly going on there. And the organism makes this very clear because its ability is to hide in plain sight. That fear of someone hiding in plain sight, digging into that psyche, in your opinion, where does that come from
Like,
in us? Yeah.
fear that we have that someone is after us, but we don't know it because they look just like someone we trust. Is that kinda yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it le this I always say, I have a low and high view of humanity, but it operates in being a teacher and other professions and working in food service and bartending, I feel like it's inevitable. But I do think that part of the thing is I think humans desire to have community and to trust one another, but humans inevitably will fail in that, I think. And so when they do, we disappoint other people. And you can look at if you've ever been through a breakup, for instance, and you've looked at someone and let's say you dated for quite some time, and it's like you don't even know this person anymore. This is
Right.
someone who knew everything, who has not changed shape, form, figure, but for some reason, just it's like that person is no longer the person that you once knew. I think that, and that could be a relative or anyone fill in the blank. But I think our trusting nature means that this is terrifying. It's a different kind of horror. It's an emotional
Right.
because this isn't someone who's I mean, they are trying to kill you, but, like, I do think it's something where, it is so beyond the scope that someone that you trusted could do something so insidious rather. You're just like I said, I think it's his own version of horror. It's terrifying.
I often, when I watch the thing, I relate with when Gary has the realization that Bennings is dead. When he says to McCready, and Kurt Russell has even said this in interviews, McCready is meant to be a one-dimensional character. He's meant to be the one that is approaching this in the most direct way. He doesn't have a lot of emotions with what's happening to the crew. Gary, however, who is supposed to be one of the leaders of this crew, after Bennings dies, he says to McCready, I know Bennings, he's my friend. And
Mhm.
McCready says, that wasn't Bennings anymore. And that is an incredibly just existentially saddening moment. It's like when in a zombie film where a friend gets turned and you
Yeah.
have to immediately, for your own well being, you have to deal with it. You don't get time to process it. That's why I love how they set up those moments in the movie of, I knew this person. It's like, yeah, you knew what they used to be. You knew a version of that person. They've become a different thing now to, to incidentally quote the title of the movie all the time. I relate heavily with that moment of, I thought I knew this person. It's like, yeah, well, that's not who they are.
I think it hits harder with people who are inherently loyal and who
Yeah.
don't like change because I do think when you see it, you kind of can see what's happening. But like the idea that everything around you just falls apart in terms of everything you thought you knew, everything that you thought was you were people you were close to, people who are, you know, you have a wife, I have a husband, you have kids, like we live in a like what if all of a sudden they just left?
It would devastate me on a deep level. It would devastate me to my foundation.
And it's like and it's that, but it's also what do you do? We would just be I would be like,
Not to get off on too much of a side tangent, there is this discussion that happens, sometimes in my marriage where Kim, my wife, is convinced that if she were to pass on before me, I would be, quote, "fine."
"Oh, I thought
And
she was gonna say because 'cause I've met Kim, I thought she was gonna say she was gonna haunt you." And I was gonna say,
oh, well, that
"Me
that would probably happen as
me too." I've told Stuart
but
all the time, I'm like, "If you take another wife" you can tell I've been watching Bridgerton, "If you take another wife, I will haunt you. I will haunt you both." Just I told him I even said, "Just know, if you do anything with her, I'll be watching you." I'm psychotic.
constantly as
I've
a ghost just being like, "I'm watching you."
why I'm like, "If you think you're, like, getting intimate, just know I'm at the foot of the bed staring at you."
Your ghost wife is haunting you.
And
I
that's psychotic.
way that Kim has told me she intends that statement is like, "You would be fine, you would move on." And what I've tried to tell her is, "No, you are
Right, I don't think
foundation."
you would be fine. I think you
I
I
would
no,
Leah knows this, but, like, Leah and I are friends to the level where she knows that my wife something happening to my wife would foundationally destroy me.
That's right. But I think it's a similar situation, and this isn't we're, like, humble bragging about our partners right now, but
Yeah,
it's also, like, who is the foundation of our life, and,
right.
with these guys who are in this place, like, these people are they've become it reminded me very much about, sort of like Alien, if you wanna
Yeah.
reference that in a way, is these people are not the people that, even when they find out they are infected or whatever.
They are, in this context, the crew of the Nostromo and Alien, the crew of the outposts
Yeah,
in The Thing. They are foundational to each other's survival. And yes, because it's a movie, we see it more physically. They have to rely on each other to physically survive. We're talking in more of the we need our partners, we need the people in our lives who are closest to us for relational, emotional, mental survival. Could I like to just differentiate it this way. Could I physically take care of my own, like, physical
right.
needs, with food and doing laundry and all this kind of stuff, going to work? Could I do that? Yes. Would
You
I
have.
I would survive.
Right.
Exactly. So, talking about trust and that foundation that they have, the trust in the crew is eroded by the organism because of the paranoia being amped up. As I was watching it this last time, I mean, I've seen the film a dozen times, but this last time, this really hit me because of the moment we are in socially and politically in 2026. There comes a point when they start doing the blood test. Here's where I want to just put this in because it's taken on new meaning. The blood test acts as an objective test to see who is lying and who is not, who is trustworthy, who is not, who is us, who is them. The thing still has to respond to an objective truth. More and more today, objective truth becomes further and further from something that we can agree on. We're not disagreeing, like we said at the beginning, we're not disagreeing on different aspects of it. No, we're disagreeing on the definition of what is true and what is not.
Yeah.
So, in the absence of objective truth, what do we do from that point on? If we can't agree on the foundation of it, is it just a matter of time before trust is completely eroded?
Yes. I mean, I think too, you get people, well, the opinions of, I think you saying the phrase objective truth is interesting to me because as a theologian, I think, because, I think that that is, well, no, I don't think, I believe that that is a difficult point to prove objective
Yeah,
truth. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of truth is based on social life. And I'm not saying that if I drop, this necklace that it will not fall. I know it'll
yeah,
fall. Like I get that. That's fine. But I do think that a lot of the way that we view truth, quote unquote, is through other people and through
mm,
people we trust. And so the fact that, what could have easily happened is for people to be like, "Oh, that blood test isn't accurate."
yeah,
That's not real. That how do we know? There's X, Y, and Z that says that that's not, and if they got enough people around them to sort of agree that actually this is not a very good way of testing this because the instruments are old or, it hasn't been proven because we never had this before, all of a sudden people would be like, oh, we can't just shoot this guy or blow him up because he
right,
got this blood test and it showed up X, Y, and Z. Now, so a lot of truth, I think, is trust, is what I would say.
okay,
Community and social trust. That we're signing a social contract, for instance, that if I take this vaccination, that it will be okay. Now, every time I get a and that it's for the greater good, it's for me and everyone else, and I'll survive. Do I know who made that vaccine? Mm-mm.
no,
Do I actually know what they're putting in my arm, like, specifically? Not even a clue.
you didn't do your own research, Leah?
I made it myself, and I brought it to them to put it into my arm at CVS.
Gosh. I did my own research is just code for I Googled some shit.
Don't ever Google medical stuff as a side quest. Like, I'm just saying, don't do that because you're gonna have cancer and you're dying. That's what you need to know. So I do think that the social contract and trust is important because people above us are doing these things. And so when you get something that's or a group of people that are so isolated and so outside of a sort of community, they have their own community, but it's a small,
Right,
isolated community. That social contract is so much more important. Like they have to trust it. And I think that we've lost that because politics have polarized it so much that all of a sudden we've signed on to two completely different social contracts here. Stuff that we thought was as truth as me dropping this necklace and it falling has suddenly become something that you can socially opt into. And we're seeing the consequences of that. And we will. I mean, but you have people that have convinced other people in a community that is not worth signing on for. And have instilled in us enough doubt. Like I
Yeah.
said about the blood test, if they had started doubting, if I was the thing, I'd have been like, that's some
Oh,
bullshit.
yeah. I'm not yeah, well, even Childs says it. He says,
Mm,
he's like, "This bullshit, man." And it's like,
mhm.
yeah, and Childs was even he's cleared by the
Yeah.
test.
Right.
Palmer is the one that starts, his blood sizzles and he starts shaking and stuff. It's like, "Oh, this was the guy that wanted to light McCready on fire 5 minutes ago." So it
Right.
makes sense for him, but Childs also wanted to light McCready on fire, and he wasn't part of the organism.
Right. So all of that is whose side are you gonna be on? You
Right.
know? Like, are you gonna be on and again, I really wanna emphasize that I am not like a person that doesn't believe that scientific truth exists or objective I'm just
Yeah.
saying from a sociological perspective, I don't think the idea of truth is something that you can say objective truth because it depends on who buys into it.
Right, and then we morph truth around other things.
Right.
Yeah, so there is this point several times actually in the movie where the men in this camp
There's not even a single woman in this film.
the original film, Thing from Another World that
Said men, and I
Carpenter
was like, "It truly is men."
right, yeah, there's not one of the dogs could have been been a girl.
Maybe.
In the original Thing from Another World, there is a lead female protagonist, and she is completely erased in this movie. And I know in the remake, there are women in that cast, but this one is like, it's all dudes, just a complete South Pole sausage fest.
Women
And
can't be scientists, our brains are too small. We might have our periods, and then what do we do?
numbers are just so difficult. When they exhibit this aggression, it's often performative because they're trying to get eyes off of them, trying to
Mhm,
both assert their dominance in a situation, but they're also trying to not incriminate themselves because if they kind of go too far, they end up like Blair, who's out in his shack and he gets sequestered alone in some of the demonstrations of this aggression, this masculine aggression in this camp, it takes the eyes off of the real threats.
mhm.
Palmer and Windows, they go at each other all the time. And that is so not the point, guys. It's so not the point. It takes the vision off of the actual threat and it puts it over in this other category. So they're not really addressing the thing that's at the base. I feel like that describes so much of political discourse nowadays because there's actually clear and present things affecting people on their everyday. Most of what we get exposed to is angry authority figures yelling at each other while we're just here like anybody want to make it like more suitable for us to live.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, don't worry about, people murdering people in the streets in Minneapolis, just know that we're taking care of the murders and rapists that are at your
Yeah.
front door. It's like it's a total distraction. Don't worry, I'm going to the grocery store after this. Don't look at the price tag at what the end of that's gonna look like,
Right.
just, worry about, X, Y, and Z that the White House says. Yeah, no, I think it absolutely is. Is a distraction. If you're really smart, and I say this in a manipulative smart way, then you'll absolutely play into the human condition and get people to fight things that they feel very strongly about or get a bunch of dudes together and throw them in a boxing ring or something and meanwhile don't look at the alien that's slowly killing you.
Right. The
He insulted your masculinity, so let's fight.
That is part of this movie that as I continue to rewatch it, the theme of paranoia is unavoidable, but
Mhm.
there's different aspects of it that become more relevant the older I get. And I'm surrounded by, more and more men my age. And men my age in our current climate are encouraged to be even more bold with how they assert themselves, which is sometimes really fun to interact with all the
I
sarcasm in the world.
Other than my reproductive rights, I've never been so happy to be a woman as this time.
We're really peaking. What I find interesting about the dynamic between these men is they would rather you just hear them louder than actually solve a problem. Like they could have solved this problem a dozen different ways that didn't involve them just yelling and screaming and being paranoid and demonizing the people that were perceived to be on the other camp, even if that person wasn't truly the enemy, like, they had to convince each other that they were the enemy, and that feels like a lot of discourse, to give it a very generous terminology, that feels like a lot of discourse now. It's, "No, I'm actually not really I don't care about the thing we're arguing about. I care that you come out on the wrong end of what we're arguing."
Yep. Yep.
That
I
is
mean, I
laced everywhere.
my gosh. People you'll see this on the all of these when you start to watch there's that quote going around from 1984 is that this is butchered, but that, the greatest thing that the government Big Brother ever did was to teach you to not believe what you see with your eyes or something.
Right.
And so you see these videos of, ICE in Minneapolis and stuff like that, and then you look at the comments, and it's just like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
"Did you see this? Did you see that?" And yeah, it's just one of those things where I think there is think about how many horror movies that we've seen that involve this sort of like you're in a bubble. I do think there's something about they do the isolation, and I think the all men thing is probably I'm sure it is on part it's John Carpenter,
Right.
so I'm sure it's on purpose.
Yeah.
That there's not a single woman there that could be like, "Just for a second."
There's no Jamie Lee to root for
I was
in
gonna
this
say,
movie.
"Where's Jamie Lee Curtis?" I want her to rock up and just be like, "Hey, guys, just one quick question. Could we not?"
Too. Well, then I'm gonna leave.
Okay, cool. Cool. I'm gonna get in the helicopter with a dog. Bye. So I think it is one of those things where, yeah, we politically we are in a bubble here too. And I think that's what happens is you just get in your bubble and then you're just absolutely infighting and us versus them. I mean, I
Yeah.
think this movie needs to be played in voting.
Yeah. To vote in the United States of
You have
America,
to have watched the thing.
you have to have watched John Carpenter's The Thing within, like, the last week. You have to really
They're
introspectively.
making a show everything else. So why
Right,
not
yeah.
show a card for, you know,
Not
watching the thing? We just need to get someone to
the
sign up on it.
As a subset here, I just wanna reference something that Kurt Russell says in a behind the scenes feature. He talks about this movie being a exercise in paranoia, which we know, but he adds the caveat, what if our projection of paranoia became true? Sometimes paranoia exists in this highly fictionalized hypothetical world, but proposes this, what if the things we were paranoid about actually became true and our mind violence became actual, true, on the ground physicality, or became a physical manifestation? I love the term of mind violence that he uses because that is what most of this movie is. Like, yes,
Mhm.
they are fighting a creature, but it is also paralleled with who in this camp am I willing to and really ready to do harm at. That is, to me, a lot of what modern political discourse has become. It is an exercise in mind violence.
Yeah. I mean, I think I do like that for you. That's so many phrases.
Kurt
I'm
Russell.
I'm starting to blush a little, Kurt. I liked your
With his coiffed hair and the
your
beard.
1980s version. You're starting to make me blush. Mind violence. Yeah. I mean, I think that is what we're doing. It's just it's the thing is too, I don't know that it's repairable. People always talk about the fact that in our current state that it'll be over. That it's a two kingdoms if you want to go theology. It's a two kingdoms theological thing. It's like, well, don't worry. Like the two kingdoms theology, for those that don't know, is this idea that we don't have to worry about what happens here and now. It's just because we'll eventually go to heaven and it doesn't matter. So you can
Yeah,
suffer and whatever. I feel like we're getting that now, and don't worry about what you said or what you did to your relatives or what you said on Facebook or whatever or how you voted because one day this will all be over
yeah.
and we won't have to think about that anymore. My argument is, I have hope. I'm not a not hopeful person by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that this is longer lasting than that. I think
Mm.
that, we are inflicting mind violence that may have residual mind PTSD afterwards. Like, I don't think
Oh,
that, how we approach our family and friends and even social media and even politicians, actually. Like, how are we
yeah.
ever supposed to trust a politician again? I don't like,
Yeah, this film really exposes the human love of just, like, finding ways to mistrust.
right.
And I know we're taught from young ages, like, "Okay, well, trust these people, trust those people." Like, you can trust your teacher, you can trust authority figures,
It's not
police,
police people.
yeah, you can trust pastors, you
Yep.
can trust your parents, like, and I think that is another thing where we talked about what happens when that foundational security in that trust, with a spouse. What happens when that foundational trust is shattered and the people you're told to trust, people told you can trust me. It's a safe space.
Climb in a
It
van that says free candy.
Yeah, yeah, it's literally but it is that. It's like free candy. Okay, I'm gonna trust that you
I
mean
like
free.
it.
And halfway through being kidnapped and shipped off to God knows where, you're like, I don't think I'm gonna get candy anytime soon. I may have bought the
But also, I think correct. Good lead with that, good analogy. I mean, I think too, at the end when you see the 2 of them and you're like, "Oh my god, this is so depressing," like, because 'cause they're just, like, slowly freezing to death or whatever. I think the mind violence stuff actually plays into that, which is that they're so how let's say they get helicoptered out. How do you come back from that?
oh,
Like, you don't. What do we think's gonna happen with these 2 guys? Like, I'm not saying, like, die. I don't want don't take that,
right.
get therapy before you go that way, but I'm just saying, like, in 1982, we've seen these guys. Are they gonna go to therapy? Are they gonna get professional? Probably not.
These action
I was gonna
heroes.
say they're 80s guys.
They're not going that like, I
No.
ain't gonna see no head shrinker.
Right, exactly. They're gonna use the phrase head shrinker, in which case,
Yes.
maybe it's better for that ambiguous ending, is that we don't know, maybe they got saved, but also if they did just drink that ball of Jack and that's it, or whatever it was.
The ambiguity of the end of this movie is something that, like I said at the beginning, it was something I loathed when I saw it the first time. But now, being older and rewatching it so many times, it's the perfect ending. It's the perfect ending because these two men assume one of them is still the enemy. They're still in but as they're sharing this drink, they choose to interact differently than the men have the entire movie. Instead of, well, whoever which one of us kills the other one, is the one that no, they summarize their context. They say, well, the fire is going to die down eventually, and then something's going to happen. And Kurt Russell says, let's just wait here and see what happens. Now, to you,
Yeah, the other guy had been gone for a while as well, so you're just like,
right? Childs is the one that goes and blows up the camp.
"Yeah,
And McCready helps with his dynamite down
yep."
in Blair's workshop. But they have this conversation, and to you, does it suggest more of like, oh, true trust has completely been eroded. We can't trust each other. I can't trust you. You can't trust me. Or is there something to be said about communing with someone who might potentially not be on your team?
I mean, I think it's the second, I think but see what has to happen for the 2 of them to commune. Everything's burned down.
The entire world is devastated.
This is done. Their world is done, and then also, yeah, they may be on opposite sides, you don't know, but here's the deal. The world that they know is over, and they choose to sit with each other as opposed to being alone because there's nothing left to fight about, right?
Yeah,
And they find the common thing, which they always had, the bottle. They always had that, and, they could have done this
an hour
an
earlier.
hour ago or whatever, but they sat there because I think there is again, this is not me being doom and gloom, but it is one of those things that what does it take for 2 people on opposing sides to come together?
Right.
I wrote my PhD on Northern Ireland, and one of the things that I found was that if you needed people from 2 opposing positions to come together, there has to be nothing to lose. And I'm not saying, like, you have nothing left, it's just saying, like, you have to have a common thing that brings you together, and you also have the stuff of the old has to be gone, and I think that's what they had. And it was quite simple, which is that, they might die, they may whatever, but that world's gone, and they can sit and drink together. And I think that that's people say, "What's the key to peace building?" There you go.
Yosemite.
Proximity, a common and also seeing that the stuff of the past is not as important as what we deemed it to be, but you can't see that when you're in it. That's the problem, 'cause when you're in it, you're just, like, left, right, and center fighting for whatever
Yeah,
is your thing, but when you realize that no one's gonna win that game, then and that everyone's a loser in this game,
right.
then you can come together. And I think what I saw in Northern Ireland is the point where people would come together is when they had so many relatives who'd been killed that or they they lost someone close to them. That was the biggest thing to bring people together is what are we fighting for here? There was this guy who became a real peace builder, and it's because his daughter got shot going to the movies one night. And he was like, I don't, that was it. I don't have
Yeah.
anything left. Like, so yeah, I'll talk to you because the thing that I cared about got shot because we keep doing this thing. And so I really
Yeah.
think that's what the end of that movie says is that, I don't think Kurt Russell cares at that stage.
Yeah, because if he even says this, he's like, "I think if one of us reveals themselves as the thing, I don't think either of us are in a position to do anything about it." And that is such a sobering way to look at the spirit of paranoia and especially political polarization that we are in right now, where two sides of every issue dispute everything. Information, is it really information? Is that really all the information? Are you not telling me correct? Well, I was joking. We don't joke about that. Actually, we do joke about that. Like, there's so many different ways that we communicate now that erode this common unity, this common humanity, the ability to sit amongst a burning hellscape and share a drink and have the posture of let's wait here and see what happens. And to know full well, a lot of us are not in a position to do much about a situation if it were to go sideways. So Kurt Russell and Keith David's characters, they choose to take on a different posture that they did not have, like you said, the rest of the movie. How can that in some way guide or inform how we interact publicly, politically, because this is a time where it's unavoidable. I can't just sit on my couch and not know what major politicians and authority figures are thinking 24/7. This isn't the news where I watched as a kid when I'd be like, "Mom and Dad, watch a half an hour of the news, and then the news is done."
You get to watch Jeopardy after that. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not as doom and gloom that I think that, like, it has to be the burning pile of thing. I
Okay.
don't think it has to be, like, the fall of a country or the fall of democracy. I think we certainly have had the fall of our country as a global influence. I don't think that will come back, but we know empires rise and empires fall. If you've ever
Yeah.
listened to Hamilton, we know that.
Always have.
Yeah, and they always have, and so I don't think we need that, but I think what we do have to have happen is and I hate this because I don't want it to be reality, but I think it has much like I was talking about that guy in Northern Ireland, I think it has to get real bad, and I'm not sure anything else will snap us out. Now, what does real bad look like? I don't know.
Like you said, I mean, you said in one context that we don't know we're in it
No, right,
until we're not in it. And McCready and Childs at the end of this movie, they're no longer in it. They're not
mm,
no longer in it as intensely. So they have that very maybe brief. We don't know what happens after the credits roll. Very brief moment of reflection of what had just happened because they're no longer actively in it. And only then are they able to say, we don't know what's gonna happen next, but we do know what just happened.
and we have that shared experience, and I think too, like, there's some acceptance there, which is that I think that's the thing is you have to accept that, we so vigorously, like, are fighting and fighting and fighting and, we're pro us and we're pro our position and we're anti the other, and I think at some stage, you have to look around and say, "I don't care if I win anymore."
Yeah. Ooh,
But what right? Think about all your values. I don't actually care if I win anymore. But for you to hit that point, it's pretty low. Like, I don't know what would have to happen for me to be like, I don't care about these values because you've just come to a wasteland and
yeah.
you look around and or it doesn't even mean that you lose your values. It means the system's gone that you were fighting in.
Yeah,
Like,
like, when everything is stripped down to the studs, what's left? For some of
you
us,
have to
it's like,
yeah.
some of us rebuild from a different foundation than others, but just as viscerally until it is ripped down to the studs. Our belief in a concept, in a person, in a system, in an organization, in a belief system, like, it's a complete deconstruction of what we value and what we're willing to fight for, because when it comes down to the foundation, we're all gonna probably have something different and nuanced. But, Leah, is there anything else with John Carpenter's The Thing that might be a glaring omission if we don't bring it up now as we, finish off our conversation?
Maybe don't shoot the guy in the helicopter that was shooting the dog, because if he's shooting a dog, he's probably shooting the dog for a reason. All I've got.
My
All
gosh,
these,
what
like,
a
horror movie things that happen, and you're just I feel like that is a premonition for the rest of the film. They're
yeah,
just
it's
like,
like,
"You know what? What we could do is talk to the guy
yeah.
about what was going on there." Nah.
Gary's like, "No, 44 Magnum, most powerful handgun in the world." He's, like, doing his best Dirty Harry impression at
It's
him.
such a mask, but and I think too, like, it's funny because I do think it has to be on purpose. John Carpenter is so careful in how he constructs films, and, like, you put Jamie Lee Curtis at the helm of, like, all these horror films, in the '70s, and then it's like, we're just gonna stick a bunch of dudes in Antarctica. Like, I fully believe he knew exactly the sort of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It exposes a lot of the toxic masculinity in the
Yeah,
conversation. There's so much, this movie could be reinspected a few different ways, but I thank you very much, Leah, for having this very, sobering conversation about political
yes.
polarization, paranoia, us versus them, how we interact with each other, and maybe what it will take to just simply wait and see what happens. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Very welcome, always a pleasure.
There you have it, listener. If today's deep dive helped you, take a second to rate and review the show wherever you're listening. It's the best way to support the show. And if you know someone who's currently wrestling with their own everyday dread, share this episode with them. The best way to face the world is together. I'm Ryan Doze. Thank you for listening to Everyday Dread. And remember, the horrors persist, but so can we.